2:30 or something like that. We would. So we'll do a tour around that time, and we'll make an announcement at that point. But enjoy yourself, meet some new people, play some games, and enjoy the food especially. Just our Heritage Cross Pasture Raised, which it'll look really nice once it's done, but this one has some skin on it, because the skin gets really nice and crispy when you grill it. I mean, it's just awesome. It's really good tasting. So we'll cut these up, and people have, you know, some of each and see what they like, and yeah, it should be awesome.
Criminal, he said my spirit doesn't know like it did before. He said that I don't look like me no more, no more. I said I'm this time, he said I'm this time. I said I saw you in the water.
It's not like an overly formal tour, so if you have questions or you see anything or whatever, like, feel free just to ask me a question. I'll be glad to answer it for you. Let's see, a little bit of our background. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, and when I was probably 14 or 15, we had close family friends, the Ranfords, and they owned a dairy farm. I grew up kind of the suburbs of Philadelphia, and it was kind of just the tail end of country living. Like, it was mostly starting to be housing developments and stuff. Today it's basically just a suburb of Indy, but at the time there were still some farms and stuff. And so they, Lee, the farmer, would often on an afternoon call me and say, hey, I could use some help like milking or whatever. And so I would go over and feed the calves and milk the cows with him. And that's where I kind of started falling in love with farming and the outdoors and kind of all that entails. When I was about 14 or 15, he got a hold of a book called Pastured Poultry Profits by Joel Salatin. And so he's kind of the grandfather of the pasture poultry movement. And he basically wrote a book to farmers about how to do it, how to make money doing it. And so I was 14 or 15, and Lee said, you should try this. I think you could do this, you know, in the summer, raise a couple flocks, and sell them to friends and family, that kind of thing. So that's what I did. So I would ride my bike 2 days a week over to the farm. It was about a 2-mile ride. I'd feed them, I'd move them, do what you're going to see today, basically, and then ride back home. And we would mix our own feed. We built our own like pluckers and scalders and all the processing equipment and all of that, and basically did everything like soup to nuts. And that's where I kind of fell in love with pasture poultry. I didn't do it for a number of years. Went to college, did different things. Worked in the kind of the corporate world for a little while, and then eventually got a job as the CEO of Moyer's Chicks, which is a hatchery in Pennsylvania. It was a family-owned business for like 70 years, and they were looking to have a non-family member run the company with a management team, and then just kind of own the business. So I did that for a couple of years. After I left, actually, they sold the company to Hoover's Hatchery, if you've ever heard of that. They're out of Iowa. So Moyer's Chicks now is owned by Hoover's. But while we were there, we would hatch about 20 million chicks a year, which sounds like a ton, and it kind of is, but it was still a relatively small hatchery in the industry. One of the unique things for us is that we would send the chicks to like larger corporate farms, you know, like big kind of like factory farms as we want to think about. And we also did like small backyard people. So you could literally order chicks like on the website and get them mailed to you, U.S. Post Office, 20 chicks, and have your own little flock if you wanted, or even less than that. And what my heart was drawn to was, again, doing it kind of more with nature, doing it in a pastured environment, raising chickens in a way that I felt was healthier for the bird and more natural for the bird, and then also for us too, right? So anyway, so that's what you're going to more or less see. So we have three different types of chicken here, but the two main types is there's a meat chicken called a broiler, and then we're all familiar with like a laying chicken. A lot of times people think that's like the same chicken, but on this type of scale, it really is not, because a meat chicken is designed to put on weight, whereas a laying hen, even though you'll see they look pretty fluffy and stuff, if you were to pick one up, like, oh, there's like really not a lot of meat here. They're pretty scrawny, but they're really good at laying eggs. So they'll crank out about an egg a day. Whereas the meat chickens, they would lay at some point, but not very well. These are kind of like teenagers, I would say. So they're almost 3 weeks old, and they're going to go out on pasture this week. So unfortunately, we don't have any really cute itty-bitty day-old chicks right now. But this is our Heritage Cross ones. We're going to see the full mature bird in just a minute. These are meat chickens. We have two different types of meat chickens, a Cornish cross and what we call is a Heritage Cross. So this is the Heritage Cross. It's a slower growing chicken, and it tends to exhibit when you process them. When you process them, it's going to be like a little more textured meat, really great flavor, and nice crispy skin. So some of the chicken we have out there, if you had any, these are older ones are going to actually be going out I guess the end of the month or so. So they're maybe a year and a half old. We basically replace them about once a year because young hens will lay really well. So obviously we're doing this to try to like make money, so we want them to be laying at high volumes. So these are called an Isa Brown, and they're basically like I don't know. Some people refer to them as like a production layer. They'll lay like 300 eggs a year. So basically an egg a day once they start laying. In the winter they'll slow up a little bit, but still they'll lay pretty strong in the winter. So this is our system for our laying hens. So what we had in there was broilers. Those are meat chickens, and we'll see the mature ones in a bit. But this is our laying flock here.
So how many eggs do you hatch like daily?
Good question. We don't hatch any of these because we actually sell them for like people to eat them. But we get about 20 dozen eggs a day. So 240 eggs a day approximately.
You see the big in there and pull them all out.
Unfortunately, if you like maybe just peek around, you'll see that there's nesting boxes there. We can open them up and just pull them right out from the outside. The only other thing I point out is, so this here is an automatic door opener. It is like really saved us. We used to have to like stay up late and wait till it was dark till they would all go in and then close it and open it up in the morning and stuff. And this is set up to do it automatically. So we can do it by sensor, light sensor. Right now we have set it at a timer. So at 7 o'clock in the morning, the door will go up and they'll all come out. And our goal is to have them all fed before that, so we don't have like a gazillion chickens around us when we're trying to do that work. And then at night, it's really interesting, but they will just head back in as it starts to get like dusk type of time of day. They know it's time to roost, and so let us go back inside. And I guess around 10 o'clock or so, the door will shut, and then they'll be safe and secure in there for the night. So.
Are these heated buildings?
They're not heated. Laying hens are really good. Even like this January was freezing cold. And they were really fun. They have a lot of feathers, a lot of kind of like girth to their feathers, and so they really are fine. In the winter, if it's like snowy and icy, we'll put straw down underneath so they aren't like right on the snow. They don't like ice; it's just down the road, and they're really good. A really good local feed mill. So it's ground fresh, which I think is really important. You can get feed at Tractor Supply or Rural King, any of those places, and it's okay, but. It's really nice to get feed that's freshly ground and it's able to be eaten within basically 2 weeks maybe or something like that. These are bell waters. They work really great. You just fill them up with water here and it's gravity fed to the bottom. These are the same as like some of the big producers might use water similar to this, but it works good on a pastured system. So these are our broilers. These are the meat chickens. And these are the Heritage Cross. So these are a little bit more unique to us. There are other farmers that do them as well, but most people doing meat chickens raise Cornish Cross, which is it's a white feathered chicken, and you actually kind of pass them. They're just over the hill. We have some over there. But the first pen that I looked in with the chicks that were a little like brownish kind of, that's what these will grow into. So these are a little bit slower growing chicken. It takes about 50% longer time for these to grow out than the other ones. And this is our system. So someone was just asking if they're heated. He was asking if they're heated. They're not heated, but these chickens we can only raise seasonally. So the meat chickens we raise, we start them in maybe like February, March in the barn, and then we're getting them out here on pasture. We probably shouldn't even start them quite that early. We're kind of pushing the season a little bit, but farmers markets start beginning of May, and we really want to have product in time for that. So we pretty much make it happen, and it's worked okay. Sometimes it's a little rainy, but it's been more or less okay. But anyway, we'll raise these until, I think the last batch we have right now is about October. And then we won't have any of the meat chickens until again in the spring. These guys are a little bit more finicky when it comes to temperature, and they would not do well in like snow or anything like that. So it's just a seasonal product. So we basically try to raise enough so that we have them in our freezer and can sell off of that until spring. So those of you that went to like Indie Winter Market and stuff like that, they were from the summer months, probably more towards like the end of the summer, and then that's what we're selling off of for the rest of the year. So we have a dolly that hooks into the front of this. You can kind of see the wheels at the back of these pens, and basically we just take all the feeders out and we put the wheels down, and then we just hook the dolly in and we'll just move it one length forward. So basically like this area we have enough for maybe like one more day forward before we have to move this fencing. And we do that every afternoon, so that'll actually be done here in about an hour or so. And then they have all this is going to be fresh grass that they can forage in. You see the feeding troughs too. It's the same company. It's also non-GMO feed that we use for that, and the same type of water actually.
Do they get a different feed than the egg one?
They do, yeah. There's a lot of similarities, but the egg, one of the things that you get in eggs that's different would be they feed them an alfalfa meal, which is like, I'm not exactly sure what that is for, but it's like it gets more green in the feed. But the big thing that you'll notice about it is that they get a calcium, which is often like an oyster shell. So the reason for that is you want hard, firm shells. You don't want to have shells, especially as they get older, can get a little weaker. So if you ever had like a egg at the grocery store, like you went to crack and it was just like hardly anything, they probably needed more calcium. Which is common. Even as hens get older, their shells often tend to get a little bit thinner. So as long as we keep feeding them calcium, though, they should have fairly firm shells. So that's one of the big differences between the feed. They will look a little bit visually different. The layer is going to be a little bit more green from that alfalfa meal, and this is going to be a little bit more yellow, I would say.
Have like oysters in there or something like that too?
Oyster shells, yeah. Yeah, children are going to be healthier, and then when we eat like whatever's produced, the produce or the meat, we're going to be healthier because it's more nutrient dense. So we've been doing some consulting with Understanding Ag, which they're kind of one of the leaders in regenerative agriculture, to be more regenerative in nature in how we raise. So like one of the things we're doing is our land, we own up to the road there, and you'll notice about half of it there is like higher grass. It used to be row crop field, and we've taken that over and turned that into pasture. And they're teaching us how to like do that. So it's better not to just let it like, hey, whatever grows, grow. Like they say, usually you should have maybe about 2 years of annual grasses planted in there, which help to like enrich the soil and get all the biology and microbiology moving and working, and then let the perennials kind of come in and take over the field. Also, you'll know if you were here last year as opposed to this year, you'll notice that we leave things a lot higher, and that's because the grass is taking so much more energy from the sun when it's like full stalk, as opposed to like this, which is much less surface area, right? So this is bringing more of that, like the energy and the nutrients from the sun into the soil to regenerate the soil as well. No-till's a big one when it comes to regenerative agriculture. So like all those fields that we replanted, well, I shouldn't say that. Last year's we did till it. That was kind of before I got into this. But this year's part of it, we did not till it. We just broadcast seed on top of it and then let it grow up from there. So it didn't grow in quite as fast, but it's doing well at this point. So, and part of the reason for that is the soil has, and I'm not an expert, I should say. I'm just learning this stuff too. And there's a lot to learn about regenerative agriculture and soil health and all that. But soil has what they call aggregates, which is kind of like the cottage cheesy part of the soil. or like the chocolate cake part of it. So if you like dig your shovel in, it would be that part that has roots and it just looks like crumbly and nice. You want that because you want the soil to be able to like infiltrate water. You don't want water just running off and eroding, and it allows the plants to grow much better when it has that type of aggregation. And tillage breaks that apart. So when you till, it's breaking all that up, and then it has to try to regrow that. So regenerative agriculture talks about like making sure you care for that aggregation, making sure you always have the soil armored, they call it, which is like just this type of thing, like organic matter, just on top of the soil so that it can be broken down by microorganisms, by worms and that kind of thing. You don't want to have bare soil as much as possible. And then a living root in the soil. So you want to always have living root in the soil. So we're actually trying to practice this with our gardening this year. It looks kind of like a mess because it looks like weeds are just everywhere. But it's supposed to help produce like more nutrient-dense produce. And so we're going to try to give it a try this year as opposed to like tilling everything and, you know, just having bare soil. But anyway, those types of concepts are what we're trying to do here as well in our pastured system. So actually this coming year we're going to take over, maybe I said this right, but we're going to take over all this front land which has been in row crop production and turn it into pasture. And the idea about regenerative agriculture is not a destination, but it's a journey, right? So that like as we continue to regenerate the soil, 5 years from now it's going to be more nutrient dense than it is today. 10 years more than that, 50 years more than that. But you never like arrive at like we made it. You know, like even farmers that have been doing this for 20 years, they'll still say we can still build deeper aggregates, we can still build healthier soils, we continue to care for it. So that's the path that we're on, and that's what we believe is important. Because we all want to live healthy, abundant lives, and it starts, you know, well, I shouldn't say it starts, but there's many things that impact that, but what we eat is an important part of that, and so we want to make sure we're producing really great quality, healthy, nutrient-dense products.
Thank